Welcome to my quick introduction to Tsugi. Tsugi is my way of interacting with the notion of the next generation digital learning environment. And the basic notion of the digital learning environment in the future is that it's not just a learning management system and the things that we can stuff into the learning management system, but an ecosystem with many things that can be brought together to advance the cause of teaching and learning with technology. And so the first thing I think that's important to do is to figure out a way to reduce the granularity of each piece of software that we have to build. Blackboard pioneered the idea of building blocks, but you had to install software in the server, and there's increasingly resistance to doing that. And so things like learning tools interoperability allow us to mash things up. But we really haven't taken as good of advantage of learning tools interoperability as we could. Most folks just use it as a simple single sign-on mechanism, and I thought that we could do much more than that. And so I've worked for the past 3 years to build a learning management system, a learning object repository, an app store for education, and all of this is rolled up into Tsugi. And in another talk, I'll give you the long history of all the little technical things that came into play that led us to where we're at. But I want to focus in this talk more on how my teaching has changed over the last 5 years, given Tsugi and how Tsugi has changed my approach. So if you go back to where I was in 2012, I, like most higher education folks, had a campus learning management system, the single learning management system, and I lived my life around that. I'm committed to Sakai. I have a Sakai tattoo, so Sakai was my thing, and I really was committed to the enterprise learning management system. They still have their place. Maybe I would have an LTI tool like Piazza that I would plug in, and there's this really cool feature inside Sakai tool called the podcasting tool, and I would record my lectures, and students would listen to them on podcasts, and I would take stuff and put it into Sakai and interact with my 300 students per year in classrooms. And once in a while, I would hand a zip of my lectures over to our Open Michigan folks, and they would go through copyright clearance, and they would put them up on their website, and maybe 2 or 3 people per year would download them. I had a book, which was my own Python book for one of my classes, and I published it on an espresso book machine. And every fall, I would tell them about 60 students are going to come over and buy this $15 book, and so please make a bunch of copies and have them up at the front desk. And that was sort of my life in 2012. Fast forward a little bit to 2017, and things are very, very different. And Tsugi's really the center of my teaching life at this point. Canvas and Sakai are no longer the center, and by the time my university switched from Sakai to Canvas as its main enterprise learning management system, I'd really stopped using Sakai as my core, the focus of my teaching. So let's start with me. Here I am. I really barely touch the learning management system anymore. I actually do all of my creation of software and content in GitHub. Okay, so I build software, PowerPoints, learning objects, applications, auto-graders, everything. It goes into GitHub. And I really believe in GitHub because of the ability to fork GitHub. I think if someone wants to take my textbook, which is now on Amazon CreateSpace, selling thousands of copies per year, somebody wants to fork my entire world, the book, the website, the software, and everything, and translate it to Chinese, then that's what I want to see happen. So I don't want to have my education be sort of scattered on all kinds of things and mostly stuck in learning management systems. But GitHub, of course, is not the way to publish. It's the way to do change management and maintain copies and keep track of things. And so I add to GitHub, I check the GitHub material onto a web server that's running Tsugi and my learning management system called Koseyu. So this little word's Tsugi in Japanese, and that's Koseyu in Korean, so you know what that means. So I have a server that runs Tsugi and Koseyu, and I pull my content and my tools, and then Tsugi gives me basically an app store, and Koseyu gives me a content object repository and standalone learning management system. And then what I do is I import these, and I was doing it in Sakai, and now I'm importing them into Canvas. And so Canvas is really a table of contents when I teach my 300 on-campus students, it is a table of contents. And more than anything else, and a table of contents and a grade book are the main things I get from Canvas. But my content is not in Canvas. It's all in Koseyu, and my learning assessments are all in Tsugi. And so that's how I deal with my on-campus folks. I also have changed my book publishing to Amazon CreateSpace, and it now has a professional title, and it's been ported to Python 3.0, and people are using it all around the world, both in my MOOC and in my adoptions around the world. And so I think of the world now as a publisher, right? I'm behaving like a publisher. I am creating content that I put into a space that others can use, and I happen to also use those. And so that's how I work. The other thing that I do is I've got, well over 1 million users in Coursera, and they get all their auto grading and much of their content also from this web server. And this web server is sort of inside the University of Michigan, and so it sort of complies with FERPA and all those other things. Professionally managed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my apps run on a professionally managed app store. I get to put new apps in, but the hardware is professionally managed. And so this kind of Coursera is a little bit of an extension of the University of Michigan. Someday I would love to put in edX. It would take me 48 hours literally to put my course up on edX if I could get permission to do so. And that's because the course is not in Sakai. It's not in Canvas. It's not in edX. And if I wanted to go to CanvasNet, I could do that in 48 hours. Actually, I could do CanvasNet in probably 30 minutes because I got such a good integration into Canvas. Okay. So that's my on-campus world and my Coursera world, but it doesn't stop there. So I also have another server that's sort of like my outward facing to the whole world, and that has another copy. I just have the stuff checked out onto pythonforeverybody.com. And I have videos that are recorded for Coursera, and I have a whole different set of videos that I've recorded myself, and I put those up on YouTube, and they currently have about 450,000 views. I keep a copy of all my videos on archive.org. And I put them on things like Amazon Prime Video, iTunes, and then Google Play as well. All right, so all my videos are many places, as many places as I can put them. Better clear the screen right here. And so what I then do is I use Koseyu to create basically a course. So Koseyu is a learning management system that takes content and using a lessons facility, structures it into lessons with assignments and thises and that's, and it orchestrates auto graders, and all the auto graders are LTI tools that are hosted in Tsugi. And so there's this whole course. I mean, years ago I used Moodle. I actually had my own instance of Moodle, moodle.drchuck.com, that I used to teach random people in the outside world. And people in the outside world, I had over 3,000 people that basically go to the University of Dr. Chuck. And I used Moodle until recently, and now I'm using Koseyu and Tsugi to completely build that learning experience, because Moodle is not like a MOOC. Moodle's like Sakai or Canvas. It's a learning management system. It's about a roster. It's about a semester. It's not self-paced, whereas Koseyu is about a MOOC. And so Koseyu, I claim, is the world's easiest to use open source MOOC hosting platform. And so this, at pythonforeverybody.com, you can log in, you can get grades, you can get open badges. So I have the Mozilla Open Badge that you can do. And so people can earn badges on my site at the University of Dr. Chuck, as it were. So that's another interesting thing. Now, the other thing is, again, I keep saying that I think like a publisher. I think like a publisher. And so the other thing that is this is also using LTI, Common Cartridge, and Content Item. I can interact with other schools and teachers who can apply to use my content and software. Now, the content's all Creative Commons. They just download it. But if they want to use my autograders, they can use my hosted autograders on this server, and they can plug that into whatever learning management system they have at their school, and I get applications for keys, and I give people keys, and then they can use my stuff. And so, to just sort of bring this all together, I'm like Pearson. Pearson has books, Pearson has interactive software, Pearson has supporting course materials, Pearson, and I have everything. Plus, I have a MOOC, which is also sort of my train the trainers kind of a place. And so I think if open educational resources and free resources are ever going to make it, this is not exactly Tsugi, this is my own open education. If they're ever going to make it, we have to compete with Pearson on their terms. We can't just say, wow, our book is better. and stop there. We have to have everything better than Pearson to actually have open education resources win. And so Tsugi and Koseyu are also a way for an individual like myself to become a publisher that competes on par and in many ways superior to Pearson's My Math Lab, right? Pearson's My Math Lab, ubiquitous, successful. It's assessment, it's content, it's PowerPoints. It's a kit for teachers to teach algebra or calculus or whatever. I want a kit for people to teach Python. And so I want my kit to be as good, if not better. And I would claim at this point, I'm probably better than Pearson's My Math Lab. Sorry, I am. Okay, so I just gave you a simple world in 2012 and a complex world in 2017. It was a interesting 5 years. What happened? Like I said, I have this whole talk that you'll probably be bored with, which I'll tell you everything that happened from 1998 to present, which is 20 years now. And that'll probably be boring to you because you don't care. But let me distill down what happened in the last 5 years. The two things that happened to me. The first thing that happened was Coursera. Coursera and the ability to engage students at scale and the notion of MOOCs just energized me to build tools and need to evolve those tools rapidly, because I decided that if a MOOC was nothing more than video and multiple choice quizzes, that it would quickly become boring to students, and I think they have. And so people who do the same formula tend not to succeed in the MOOC space, I think. So you got to do something different. And the thing that I wanted to do different was assessments. I wanted to make interesting assessments that were fun and engaging and advance the learning objectives. Because literally, if you go lecture quiz, students are going to always go to the quiz. They're going to sit there with the quiz open and watch the lecture and just go B, C, F. And literally, they're not interested in learning the material. They are interested in achieving the quiz so they can get done because they don't have time. If, on the other hand, you go straight to the assessment and it's like, oh, this is a genuine assessment. I can't evade the learning objectives. I can either write Python code in this assessment, or I can watch the lecture and learn how to write Python code, then come back to this assessment. So genuine assessments. And I sometimes write for one assignment for 1 week in one class, 200 lines of code, 500 lines of code, whatever, to make the assessment. Because my assessments are complex and they're intricate and they're different for every student, and every assessment's different. And so I write software for my assessments. I don't just use a quizzing engine or a widget that does drag and drop or whatever. My assessments are so interesting, like Pearson's My Math Lab, except they are not good compared to my stuff, but that's a different problem. So the need to build amazing assessments and evolve them quickly every time a student had a problem. I even built my own peer grader because I didn't like Canvas's peer grader. I don't like Sakai's peer grader. I don't like Coursera's peer grader. I don't like any of them. So I wrote my own peer grader. Why? Because I have a pedagogy, and my pedagogy fits my peer grader fits my pedagogy. End of story. I don't care if you like it or not. I'm grading my peer grader one way or the other. So Coursera changed my life for the better, challenged me for the better. The other thing that happened, and this is a much more quiet revolution than you haven't heard about, perhaps you're hearing about it right now for the first time, and that is a new standard. You've heard about learning tools interoperability, I'm sure. What you haven't heard about is the content item message. And IMS is building lots of good standards, one roster and outcomes and all these things, and LTI2. But literally the one that is going to change the world the most, in my opinion, is content item. And I think this is one of the greatest, most underappreciated standards that ever was. And the reason is that content item is a simple standard that fills the gaps between learning tools interoperability and common cartridge, meaning that common cartridge was sort of incomplete and learning tools interoperability was incomplete, and content item sort of connects them and fills their gaps in amazing ways with a very simple standard. And that's why content item is so absolutely important, because ultimately I have been watching Learning Object Repository, go back to Equella, go back to Blackboard's Explore, go back to Canvas's Commons, and I think they're all crap, basically. And the reason they're all crap is that they don't actually address the needs or use cases of teachers. They all sort of think from the point of view of instructional designers. Instructional designers want to author content outside in tiny little pieces and then figure out the paths between those pieces. Teachers just think in terms of weeks. Well, the other problem is that everybody had to build their own protocol between their repository and their learning management system. And so they built a proprietary protocol. And I've seen some of them. They're crap. They're bad protocols. And that happens if you build a protocol between two things and you control both sides of the protocol. It's really easy to say, you know what, we're in a hurry. Let's just do this one sloppy thing. And the answer is, well, as soon as you do a sloppy thing, then you have a bad integration. Content item is beautiful. It is an absolutely beautiful specification. It is a beautiful separation of concerns. It's simple but flexible and expandable. And for the first time in educational technology history, no one knows this, you can build a learning object repository with nothing but standards. And what's exciting is that the vendors, Sakai, Moodle, Canvas, Desire to Learn, are all implementing this quietly. LTI content item is being implemented. The only one that I don't know yet is Blackboard, and I just want to push Blackboard to do that, and then we'll have this, and then I see a whole raft of wonderful learning object repositories being built, and perhaps take the existing learning objects repositories like Blackboard's Explore and or Canvas Commons and sort of retread them to use standards. But Tsugi already does all this stuff today, downloadable, ready to go, right? I live in the future, right? I'm not waiting for somebody else to build this. I'm going to build it first. Now, I can't take all the credit, right? So I'm the guy with the tattoo, the IMS Learning Tools Interoperability Ring of Compliance, and I can take some credit for the initial rollout of LTI. I put a lot of energy in 2008, 2009, and 2010. But there's other people who have done some really great work, and they deserve to be recognized as well, because the content item and the common cartridge spec are equally important in this future world. So Bracken Mosbecker, a former Canvas employee, is probably one of the 3 or 4 people who know more about common cartridge and have put more into making common cartridge useful than anybody else. So I have to thank Bracken, who's a good friend. Brian Whitmer, you can see there one of his Halloween costumes was to dress up as me, and he put a tattoo on his shoulder. Brian Whitmer, early Canvas employee, no longer an employee. I think he's still on the board of directors or something. Smart guy. He really was the architect of Canvas's LTI, and content item was an early Canvas extension that was handed to IMS and then improved by IMS, and then Canvas took it back and implemented the standard. And so that's really wonderful. And so really the 3 standards that I think are the most important standards in terms of interoperability and interaction, certainly between learning object repositories, app stores, and learning management systems, are these 3 specs. And these 3 people and many other people have put a lot of effort into all these standards. But I gotta make sure that I give a shout out to the people that I think really taught me a lot, and I learned a lot from those folks. So I could go on and on and on and on about how this all works, and I will in later videos. But I'm not going to do that now because this was supposed to be a quick pitch. And I also am going to do some later videos where I demonstrate how these integrations work, so you can see how the software works, demonstrate how the software gets installed, et cetera, et cetera. So pitch all that stuff. Look for future videos on all that stuff. This is just a tiny little example of what you're going to see. And let me give you the basic idea of content item. So in the background here, this is Sakai. It's a learning management system. I have pressed a button to say, go select content from an external source. Sakai pops up this dialog. Tsugi lives inside of an iframe. It's in a picker. You can navigate through here, and then you pick a thing, and then that gets sent back to Sakai. And that's the basic mechanism of content item, in that you can go somewhere outside of the system, choose something, and then send that thing back. So it's a way of installing tools, it's a way of installing contents, it's a way of installing links, etc., etc., etc. So look for those demos. They're going to go by really fast, where a pop-up's going to show up. You're going to be going from the learning management system to Tsugi, and then click, click, and you're back in the learning management system, and magic has happened. And it works in Sakai and D2L and all those others, and so it's very exciting. So I hope you found this useful. You can interact with my software on Tsugi.org, which itself is a course on how to use, deploy, and develop for Tsugi. Python for Everybody and Web Applications for Everybody.com are also sites that I have. Thanks for watching.